I think the Bascom's a jewel. To have something like this in the mountains, in our community, it's a precious thing.
Mike and Virginia Campbell have sponsored the Three Potters event the last 3 years, and Delta Airlines as well. This particular year, what we wanted to do is show the range of clay, from pots to sculpture to wall pieces.
The art, the interaction with artists, the barn where all the pottery work goes, I mean, there's so much energy, and it provides so much energy.
It's just very powerful to have three very, very talented, very well-known artists come in and for once kind of strip the cloak off and just be themselves and work in front of everyone. And it's like they're in their own studio, but they're in the Bascom studios.
I mean, this concept I think is amazing because you've got three different potters that have completely different styles, completely different approaches, you know, and they've got great personalities and they're very engaging. And everybody has a little different take on it and different coaching techniques.
Potters, you feel like we're all kindred spirits. Just seeing the three work and work together, that was very relaxed, very laid back.
The structure of the Three Potters event, you know, the 2-hour reception last night gives people a preview for the show. It kind of built some hype for the 6-hour demonstration that we have today. The reception last night was a DC event, Director Circle event, and what that means is people who have donated $1,000 or more, we asked them to come out and be a part of this like special event, which means they get the preview for in my mind, some of the best work that's come through here. This morning, Fong and Jim and Brandon both were kind of talking about where they come from, and not necessarily the place where they live, but maybe their path through academia or the decisions that they made in order to help influence their work.
The body of work essentially was inspired by a tradition that was called Yixing from China. The focus is on color. I basically layer these low fire glazes and I fire it in an unorthodox manner where I over-fire it and it creates an overmelting. I do a tremendous amount of glaze testing. I was telling the audience this week that, you know, conservatively, I'd like to think that over the last 20 years, 10,000 glaze tests. I am extremely conscientious of form. And, I like the classical round form. I like the fact that these pieces are sensuous in the classical, they're really wonderful just to pick up. That draws my attention. Texture is another theme, variegations is another theme. The treatment of the overhead handles, that to me completes a form. So many varieties of ways that I quote unquote dress my work.
He is so precise on how he does it, and I've been trying to work on the same form that he has. And mine keep collapsing. So when I'm watching him, it's like I can see what he's doing. I can see how he's doing it. He's using his own tools.
I made the tools for myself because I needed to get these shapes because they were tiny and I could not figure out how to get the shapes.
At this point, a lot of the people are asking about how they fire, how do they, Brandon Reese is making these big sculptures. So how does he get those and into the kiln and what type of kilns he's using?
I really, enjoy kind of the physicality of just working and sort of pushing those boundaries and making something that sort of has more of a equal dialogue to myself. I think people are sometimes surprised that it's ceramic, especially the bigger pieces, and so they're like, whoa, and that's one thing that I'm trying to do is just sort of push ceramics to boundaries that it's normally, it hasn't been before. There's something that you get that's a totally different feeling when you approach something and you're, it's like your size or maybe larger, looking up. And most of my pieces have always had kind of like a dual or multiple component structure to them. But I just feel like the ceramics and the wood both kind of feed off each other. And with putting them together, they sort of become more than what they are individually. And that goes into just kind of thinking of like my wife and I, our relationship and our kids, and the dynamic when you have like couples or groups. Just there's something that each individual contributes that's greater than themselves. And for the most part, I want to just be pretty true and kind of honest to the material and what they're about. And And that's what, you know, I'd love to do, you know, who I am and what our family's about.
I try to associate their personalities to what they do art-wise, you know, and so you kind of go through and you watch them, and I watched them over the course of yesterday evening and today, and they really do sort of pair up with what they produce.
Well, the Chinese culture and Chinese pottery has always been the main source of inspiration. They've always spoke to me, and many of the pieces, you know, as you can see behind me, are represented. The forms are very Chinese.
Jim Connell is just so unique in his curves and in his style, and they all make it look so easy.
You're dealing with a very stationary, static piece, but you know, the whole idea is try to get some movement. I have done the carving since about 1980. I have tried so many different methods of cutting and carving, and sometimes you do something and you put it on the shelf and you come back to it 2 or 3 years later. When you've looked at it, you've absorbed it and maybe heard some feedback from other people, but sometimes you just can't recognize a good idea right away. You know, you can make separate things and how you put them together look like they belong. You know, the shell on the lid was a nice solution to the carving that moved around, and of course, as we know, seashells have that nice spiraling effect. Glaze is probably the hardest thing a potter really can master.
Glazing, ingenuity, solving problems.
They can't imagine how much this enriches my experience in my level of learning. I refer back to these 3 potters in what I do from now on, and try and duplicate and try and learn from them. I would never get that opportunity otherwise.
Western Carolina has a deep, rich history of art, craft art particularly, and this weekend with the potters, it's just a carrying on of the tradition, and you just see generations and generations of people that are coming in and participating.
As we move forward, what I'm trying to do is take the regional aspect of this 3 Potters Symposium to more of a national stage. Even the people that have been here today that have come through said this is just such an amazing event. We can't believe that, you know, you can have these people this caliber come in and work.
There isn't any place in the world that makes pottery like they do it in North Carolina. Young people that are involved in the art and involved in their programs, and you look at their talent, I mean, it is very likely that you may see the next Jim Connell or Fong or Brandon. That's where the next generation is, and we hope that when they come into Bascom and they see the spark to make that happen.